Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, thank you as always for being here. I am super excited because we are kicking off Christmas in July with my top 25 Christmas DIYs from the entire time I've been doing my channel. So let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting.
DIY number 1.
Okay, this is from the Dollar Tree. It's just a little sign, and I am going to be cutting off the top part of it. Now, it is too wide for my little miter box, that my hand saw miter box. So I am going to be using I want to call this a Sharpie, my X-Acto knife. My sharp knife. So as you can see, I'm using my square for my straight edge, and I'm just going to keep scoring this over and over again. These boards are not real thick. It's somewhere between a wood and a really heavy cardboard, I would say. I'm not even sure what it's called, but if you are patient and you just continue to score it over and over again, you will be able to cut through it. You just need to apply a little bit of pressure and just keep scoring it until you make it all the way through. This is if you don't have access to a saw. Obviously, if you have just a saw, it's really, really quick if you have a saw. But that's an option for you if you don't have one. So now I've got my piece that I'm ready to work with, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. My goal is to put 24 equally spaced holes across the bottom. So I broke out my measuring tape, and then I started using my calculator on my phone trying to figure out. So I'm like, well, it's just shy of 18 inches divided by 24. And I was like, well, that's not quite right because, yeah, you guys, I am visual, right? I can do basic math, but this one was really challenging me. I stuck with it for a little while and finally decided that no, I need a visual. So I pulled out some parchment paper and I decided I was going to make myself a template because I want this to look nice. I want it to be properly done. I just don't always know the means to get there. So if you have a good way to figure out how to put 24 of these little holes, across, how you calculate that, I am all ears. So at first I started creating this template. This is just parchment paper, but I did it longer than the board. And then after doing all my folds and everything else, I realized it needs to be the same size as the board. So I created a new template that was going to be the same length as my board, so that as I create my folds, which I'll explain in a minute, it was going to be within the confines of the board itself. Hopefully I am making sense. So now I started folding it. I folded it in half, and then I started folding it in quarters. I probably, if I'd thought about it, should have done my folds in a different way, because then I realized, well, the halfway mark, because I have 24 holes I'm making, the halfway mark is going to be right smack in the middle of my, what would it be, 12th and 13th holes, right? Originally, I was thinking each crease would be the center of a hole. Well, no, that's not how this is going to work out. Each hole is going to have to be between the creases. I don't know if I'm making any sense whatsoever, but stick with me because I do finally manage to get it there. I'm just sharing all of this with you so you can see what I was doing, what wasn't working, how I was figuring this out. And again, if you have any suggestions on how I could have done this in an easier way, I am completely open to suggestions. So here I'm just counting up the number of sections that I have, and I had 24 sections. So I realized I was going to have to punch my holes in between my creases. Now I also want to make sure that they are in a straight line. So I decided I was going to go ahead and, actually I guess maybe not yet, I'm not sure what I was doing at this point. Maybe I was, oh, this is where I was thinking about punching my holes. And this is where I realized that I needed some sort of a line to keep everything even and straight. So this is where I'm going to fold up the bottom, and I'm going to fold it up about an inch. And I want to make sure that it's even all the way across because I want my line to be straight. So I am just making sure that I've got my crease going all the way across, 1 inch up, nice and straight, and that it's along that crease line that I'm going to be punching my holes for my template, or at least marking it off. So I'm using my little piercing tool from the Dollar Tree, and I had it folded in half because I figured I could do, a couple of them at a time. It was getting a little bit off, so I ended up, flipping it over and going through the other side as well, and just making sure that everything was centered along that line in between my other creases. Hopefully I'm making sense. And I know you probably can't see those little holes that I've pierced, but I was able to see it on my work surface. So these were really just guidelines because, again, this is just a pattern really. And I'm going to be getting out my drill in a few minutes. And where I marked those little, I'm going to call them guide holes, that's where I'm going to be drilling. So, and you know what? I am so proud of how this piece turned out. So I hope that you're going to hang in there with me. This is a little bit more involved than some of the things that I normally do. I wouldn't say that it's difficult per se, just more involved, and it took me a little bit more time than a lot of the projects I work on. And after this one, I've got a couple of really easy ones. So just hang in there with me. So now I have a candy cane and I have all my drill bits, and I'm looking for a drill bit that is slightly larger than my candy cane. I don't want it to be super large, but just it's going to be enough so I can fit my candy cane into the hole. Now I have this up on some pieces of wood. I don't think I showed that, but I want to make sure I'm not going to drill a hole through my table. I did kind of nick my self-healing mat there because I didn't have it quite propped up high enough, but I went and got some more wood and set that underneath the left side. I am probably not doing this in a way that is the safest, so please be safe. Don't necessarily do what I do. I probably should have had this not anchored down. What's the word I want? I don't know. Probably should have been doing it off the side of a table so that, yeah, just be safe when you do this. That's all I can say. I am doing it the way that I need to be able to show you what I'm doing with the camera. So now you can see I've got all of my 24 holes punched here. It did chew up the board a little bit. So I'm just taking my sand block and sanding that down. I was afraid it was going to completely take the finish off of the surface, and surprisingly it did not. There I was just testing to make sure that my candy cane fit through the hole, because that would have been a real bummer if it didn't. And now I'm just taking some fine grit sandpaper and going in around each of the little holes as well. So while it got a little bit chewed up around the edges, it wasn't too bad. And once I get everything cleaned up, I'm going to actually grab some Adirondack white chalk paint, and I'm going to dry brush this just to kind of clean up the hole areas, and then also brighten it up a little bit, and just make sure that the piece looks coherent. Coherent, is that the right word? Uniform, maybe? I don't know. But I definitely wanted to touch up the area around those holes. So that was the purpose of the dry brushing on this. So once I had that all set, I went over to my Cricut app on my phone, and I am just typing up Christmas countdown, and I picked out just a basic cursive font. And then I went ahead and did a whole bunch of numbers 1 through 24, and got those all set. I put them originally in the same font. Y'all, I ended up doing these numbers 3 times. and I'll explain why in a minute. But I've got my little Cricut Joy with the Smart vinyl. It's just measuring off the vinyl. I'm telling it to go ahead and start cutting, and it went to work. I love this little machine. It does such a great job, and it's just so quick and easy to use, and it tucks away in my little drawer, and it's awesome. So I cut off the vinyl, then I was cutting out some of the excess vinyl that I wasn't going to need to use because I like to save the scraps for future projects. Then I went ahead and I weeded the numbers first. I wanted to make sure that I applied the numbers to the project first, so that I would then be able to figure out where to put the Christmas countdown as far as from top to bottom goes. So weeded all of that out. And once I had this completely weeded and put it up here, I realized my numbers were going to be too large. They were not going to fit properly, especially when I got into the 20s over my holes. So that was why I redid it. The first time, I basically just made them a lot smaller. And while that was cutting, I went ahead and weeded out my Christmas countdown, got that prepped. I always find this so satisfying. I know some people don't have the patience for it. I know Annie from Indie Annie Jones is always saying she just doesn't have the patience for it, but I actually find weeding relatively satisfying until it becomes like this. So the font that I'd used, because I made it so small now, I was struggling massively with trying to get this weeded. These, especially the ones in my numbers, they did not want to cooperate. I finally got so fed up with it. I was like, heck with it. I'm going to do it again. But I needed a different font. I needed something that could remain smallish. I mean, not super small. They were probably half an inch tall, I'd guess. But I needed maybe not even half an inch. They might have been a little smaller than that. But I needed something that was going to be chunky enough for me to be able to weed, right? So here comes the third time. Third time's the charm, right? So once that was all set, I went ahead and I weeded it, got it all ready to go, and then I was ready for my transfer tape. So just using my little weeding tool also to help me make sure that I'm poking all the numbers out and that they're laying down. Now, I opted to actually use the vinyl. I also could have used these as a stencil to paint everything onto the board. But like I said, I decided I was just going to use the vinyl letters. I don't know why I wasn't using the transfer tape at first, but there I've got my one on, and I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing all the way along the length of my board and just apply my numbers in order right above the little holes that I've drilled. So I had originally in that first attempt thought, well, maybe I could get the numbers where I needed them and just put them all down at once. Yeah, I think that would have taken a lot more calculation, because I wasn't really sure what the spacing needed to be for each number in the Cricut app. And yeah, so I was trying to keep it simple. Now I've got my Christmas countdown that is all on my transfer tape. I'm going to burnish that down and then peel that back. And again, I could have used it as a stencil and painted this on. I decided I was just going to use the vinyl itself. And now I'm going to embellish the top of it. So I have these greenery picks, not greenery, evergreen. That's what I wanted to say. These evergreen picks. At first I thought they were going to be too long. So I went ahead and I cut one of them in half. Oh, excuse me. And then I've got my little berries there. And as I was working with this, I realized that with these larger berries, the evergreen definitely needed to be longer. So like I said, I am visual. I have to see things laid out before I 100% commit to them. But I finally got it going to a place that I liked it. And that was when I decided I was good to start going ahead and securing this down. So once I have it somewhat laid out the way that I want it and where I can start kind of seeing it in my mind's eye now, I'm going to go ahead and use some hot glue to pin this down. Not pin it down, but secure it and glue it down. Clearly, I fuss a lot when I'm doing these things. Okay, Corie, enough's enough. Let's go. All right, so here I am going to go ahead and apply some hot glue. Just a nice bit of hot glue there, putting these down. I did twist these together just to try to keep them a little bit conjoined. You don't necessarily have to do it that way, but that was how I opted to do it. And now I'm going to tuck in my berries, but I decided that the picks were a little bit too long, so I trimmed that down because I don't want wires sticking out. I want everything nice and pretty and hidden. So I got the other one prepped. Got that set down. And then I do have some little gold pine cones, these little mini pine cones that I'm going to be applying to the middle in a second to cover up that center section. But first I grabbed the other two pieces that I had trimmed and I tucked those in. There was some hot glue in there that kind of grabbed them, but I'm going to be flipping this upside down once I have everything attached and just reinforce it in the back. You'll see that in a minute. So I've got these 3 little pine cones that I'm setting down. I think 2 of them were actually painted gold, and then one of them was like gold glitter. So just something to give it a little bit of bling and to add a little bit more gold, like my lettering. So here I'm just coming in and reinforcing the back of it for those 2 little pieces of evergreen that weren't 100% glued down. And just making sure that those are nice and secure. So now I have this cord. I believe this is from Hobby Lobby, if I'm not mistaken. I think I got it like 50% off or something. And I am going to secure it to either side. This is a gold cord that's also a little bit iridescent. It has like greens and reds kind of glimmering through it. It's really very pretty. But just creating a hanger for this, I had added some hot glue as you saw, but then I'm also going to grab a little piece of scrap fabric and I'm going to cut a little rectangle here that I'm going to put down over the hot glue. I've seen other people do this and I just figured it would help secure it a little bit better. I don't know if that actually works or not, but it also is hiding the end of my cord as well. So kind of just cleaning up the back and making it a little bit neater, a little bit more finished, and it blends somewhat with the board itself because it's white on white. And while the board is a little bit distressed, hopefully for you guys forgive me for letting this be what is in my mind finished. So once I have that all taken care of, I decided my hanger was a little bit too long, so I'm just going to tie a little knot at the top of this. I kind of twisted it a few times to help make it easier to knot, and that is actually going to create the center of my hanger and give it a little bit more interest even. So as far as I was concerned, it was a happy accident. And that is it. Now I get to put my candy canes in, and I have my little Christmas countdown advent calendar, if you'd like to call it. But just got those all in, and this is all set. I love this so much. I hope that you do too, but let me know what you think of this one.
DIY number 2. DIY number 1.
All right, I have a whole bunch of scraps of paint sticks, and then this is a wall decal or a set of wall decals that my sweet subscriber Rose sent to me a while back, and I'm just showing you what it's supposed to look like if you put it on the wall. It kind of forms a Christmas tree shape with all these words. And I'm looking for pieces of wood that'll work with these shapes. So this is a little plank that came in a pack of, I think it was 6 from the Dollar Tree. I just pulled one of them out and I am cutting it down to be double wide so that it's about the same width as the paint sticks I'm going to be working with. And this is going to be a little bit wider at the top for my star shape that you can see there at the top left corner of the screen. I'm using some tape. I had used some wood glue to combine those two pieces, and I just taped it so that it wouldn't slide, and then I put something heavy on it to let it dry. So now I'm taking all of my scraps from my paint sticks. These are all the larger paint sticks. So the ones that are probably, gosh, I would say 1.5 to 2 inches wide. And then I think they're maybe 18 inches long. So the big ones that you could find at your home improvement store. And I was trimming off the angled edges as well as the handle parts. And you can see they're all different lengths. And then I didn't have any that were quite large enough for some of what I needed to do. So I was going to have to trim those off, but I decided I was going to cut out all of the little pieces of my wall decal first so that I could lay it out and figure out exactly how long I needed each of my sections of paint stick to be. I am not one to do a whole lot of measuring. If you guys have followed me for any amount of time, you know I'm really bad about giving you dimensions because I do everything by sight. Not everything, but most things. And if you have seen me measure, you've probably understood why I do things by sight, because I am really good at messing up the measurements. So at any rate, I am just, right now I'm looking at the different pieces that I have that are already cut, and I'm trying to line them up with the words that they'll fit with. So this is really, there's no science to this, you guys. I'm literally doing it by sight and just using my scraps first. And then once I get through all of my scraps, I will go ahead and trim up some new pieces, or I'll cut down some scraps to make them fit a little bit better. So you can just see how I'm doing all of this here. Once I had everything trimmed up, I did use some sandpaper, just clean up the ends, make sure everything was nice and smooth. And then I gave everything a good coat of Adirondack white chalk paint. So you can see them all kind of lined up there on their sides drying. And once that was all set, I went ahead and started lining them up in size order so that I can get ready to put my decals on here. So I'm getting them all lined up. I think it was 10 rows in the end, if I'm not mistaken, including the star. It was either 9 or 10, but yeah, I'm counting real quick. It was 10 with the star included. So once I had them all lined up in size order, I went ahead and placed out my little words again, make sure everything looks as it should. And once I did that, I can go ahead and start removing the backing and applying them to my little slats. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, but I'm just making sure I've got everything lined up, and then I'll smooth it down. I started trying to use my little burnishing tool, but then ultimately I found, just because my surfaces weren't super smooth, it was just easier with my fingertips because I had some brush strokes and stuff like that. So I just used my fingers and just worked my way up with each little segment, and just made sure everything was nice and smoothed down. My goodness, tongue-tied tonight. I grabbed out another full-length paint stick then. I was just making sure I had an idea of how much the bottom part of that paint stick would stick out from underneath. This is going to be my trunk for my tree, right? And I decided I liked the shape of the handle, so that's the part that I'm going to use as the trunk. And I only put enough wax. This is my antique Waverly wax. I only put enough of it to be visible from the front. And then I did coat the rest of just one side, which is going to be the back side, with the wax. I didn't coat the whole thing because I want the glue that I'm going to be using to be able to adhere directly to the paint stick, as opposed to having the wax to have to deal with. So now I'm just flipping everything over. I did have some wax I noticed on my surface, so just getting that cleaned up so that I don't end up getting wax on the parts that I don't want it on. So I'm just flipping them all over in order. And I am going to go ahead and adhere them here. So now you can see where I left the natural wood color, because I am going to be using my wood glue, and I wanted to have that pure wood surface to adhere the pieces to. Hopefully that makes sense. So then I used a teeny little bit of hot glue on either side of my wood glue band, and I'm adhering my little star to start, trying to make sure that it's super straight, because as I come down, I'm using that as my starting point, obviously. And as I come down and I line things up underneath, I want to make sure that they don't look crooked, because the closer we get to the bottom and the longer the slats, the more obvious it's going to be if something isn't straight. So I did about halfway through just check it, but you can see how I'm just adding a little bit of hot glue each time, just for that immediate bond, so that it gives the wood glue enough time to cure without me having to pause what I'm doing and hold on to it, or you know what I mean. So then I did need a little bit of extra glue there at the bottom. I got that attached. I am loving this project, you guys. So once I had that all done, I did use some Mod Podge. This is the satin that I'm using, but you could use whichever version of Mod Podge you want. The reason that I decided to coat it was actually for a couple of reasons. One, this is going to seal in all of my decals, so they're not going to lift and fall off, but it's also providing a consistent sheen to the entire project, because my decals had a little bit of a shine to them. They had a little bit of a gloss, and my chalk paint was matte, right? So it was very obvious that I had a bunch of decals adhered onto the slats. So in using the Mod Podge, that's going to provide a consistent sheen, and it's going to look a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say continuous, but that's not the right word. I think you understand what I'm saying though. But I love this. I hope you love it too, but let me know what you think. And I'm going to show you on display right here. If you are new to my channel is Crafted by Corie, and my name is Corie, and I love to do all kinds of different DIYs and crafts, usually on a budget. I do a lot of Dollar Tree, I do some Trash to Treasure, and I am just so thrilled to have you here. So thank you for being here with me and for all of the support. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you'll do so. DIY number 3. So this is my inspiration picture for my next project. It's inspiration only, it's not going to be exact, but I've got a couple of these fun frames from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to be using one of these wood pieces from the wood pile from the Hobby Lobby. I think there were 6 in that pack, and I want to say it was like $2.99. So I am prepping my frames. I'm pulling all of the little tabs out. And then I'm going to seal the glass into the frames using my Star Bond glue and accelerator. And so you just use a little dab. They say like a little dot every inch is all that you need. And this stuff really worked well, especially with the accelerator. I was impressed. Of course, I should have taken the cap off of the accelerator first. find a way or make a way. But I sprayed that on the other surface, set down my glass, and then just made sure that it was where it needed to be. And yeah, that was good to go. So I did the same thing on the other side. And now I'm going to be taking my little wood piece, and this has curved edges on it, and I want the edges to be square. So I am just slicing off the ends so that I have square edges. And the reason for that, and then I went ahead obviously and cleaned it up with my sanding block, but the reason for that is I'm tucking it into these frames and I want it to sit as flush and square as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Star Bond crazy glue again, use my accelerator, got that set in there. And then did you see how quick that set up, you guys? It's like in there. So I'm adding some to the other end, and I'm going to use my accelerator on the other side and attach that as well. Once I had that all set, I'm going to grab a bunch of the large popsicle sticks, large craft sticks, if you will, and I'm going to go ahead and create a roof with these. So using my crazy glue again, I'm applying the accelerator to the opposite piece. So wherever you put the glue, that's not where you want to put the accelerator. So you spray the accelerator on the thing that you're attaching it to, if that makes sense. So the glue goes on one part that you're connecting, and then the accelerator goes on the other part you're connecting, and then when you put them together, it just creates that bond almost instantly. So as I go up the little roof, I'm overlapping my craft sticks to make it look a little bit like shingles. So I did the one side and then I came back in and I did the other side. And I was applying glue to the edge where I knew it was going to connect with the frame. So now I'm coming in and I'm taping the glass. And I'm doing it this way because I just want to make sure I don't get paint on it. I could have painted it beforehand, but I figured I wanted to paint the entire thing. So I just went ahead and taped off the glass and did it all at once. This is my Elephant Chalk Paint by Waverly, and I'm giving the entire lantern one good coat of elephant. That was really all it needed. It didn't need more than a single coat. So it worked out real well. So now I have these shower curtain rings from the Dollar Tree, and then these picks that I'd picked up. They were $1.49 at the Hobby Lobby, and I've had them in my stash for a few years. I'm sure I got them on sale, so they were probably 40% off. So $1.50 for these plus 40% off. Speaking my language. So I trimmed off the ends of these, and I am just going to situate them at the top of the roof and use some hot glue to secure those on either side. And then I'm going to go ahead and take one of the shower curtain rings and I'm going to give that a coat of the elephant chalk paint as well. And as I was doing this, I felt like it was looking a little bit flat. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to get out my brushed metal folk art chalk paint. So I went ahead and grabbed that, and I'm using a little bit of a dry brush technique on the shower curtain ring. And so just giving it a little bit more interest. Now, once that's all dry, I'm going to tuck it in between my little floral picks and secure that down with hot glue as well. And that's just going to create the top of our lantern there. So once that was all good to go, I decided to come back in with some more of that brushed metal paint. And it's basically a gold tone. It's called brushed metal for whatever reason, but it's just a really pretty metallic gold. And I really like it a lot, actually. So I am just, again, very lightly streaking that on to add some detail and some dimension to the project. Hopefully that makes sense. And that was pretty much it, you guys. I am loving this too. I hope you love it as much as I do.
DIY number 4.
So here is my inspiration piece. This is the Mackenzie Childs piece. I'm using a do-it-yourself little ornament from the Hobby Lobby that I've had in my stash for a while, as well as some of my Arteza acrylic paint markers. Now, I thought I was going to make the top of this gold at first, and I went ahead and painted it and set it aside to dry, but then after a while I was working on the project, I decided I really didn't want it gold, and I ended up painting it black in the end, so you'll see that later. But in the meantime, I am sectioning off our ornament, and I'm kind of trying to think through what I'm doing here, because I know I need to have an even number of spaces for my checkers to work out properly. So I'm sectioning it off. I'm just cutting it in half every single time here. But now trying to figure out where I want my other marks to go in order to get the size checks that I want. So I went ahead and I sectioned it off another 2 times. And again, just think about cutting this ornament in half right down the middle each time. And I would start at the top and find my way down to the bottom so that I just had a little bit more control over where my lines were going. Hopefully that makes sense. I was afraid that if I just kept going around the circle, I was going to end up not making a straight line and end up who knew where. So this was my way of trying to maintain a little bit more control over what I was doing. So once I had that part done, I went ahead and I came in and I cut it in half the other way. So I'm cutting it right down the middle, and then I'll come in and cut each of those 2 large sections in half as well. So the top section and then also the bottom section. So it's almost looking a little bit like a globe to me now. But once I had that all set, I went ahead and started filling it in. I'm sorry, I'm a little off camera here. But I went ahead and started filling in. Of course, I got to do the little top because we can't be leaving anything undone, right? So filling it in now with my paint marker. So I filled in all of the black squares. They're not really square, but all of the black sections first, and then I came back in and I did all of the white. Now, I did this first run with my paint markers. Obviously, you see me using my paint markers because I thought I was going to have a little bit more control over what I was doing. I was a little weary to try to use a paintbrush on this, but I did decide after I had this all done that it needed a little bit more coverage than what the paint markers were affording me. I mean, the markers, don't get me wrong, they have good coverage, but I felt like I could see all of the pen strokes, the marker strokes. So I just wanted it to be a little bit more solid. So I ended up coming back in with my Arteza acrylic outdoor paint and just used a brush and was very, very careful with how I did that. So you can see me coming back in here just because I wanted it to just, I don't know, I didn't want it to look like I had drawn everything on. So hopefully that makes sense. And I would say as long as you are patient and take your time, you can absolutely do this. Obviously, I did this all freehand. I did not tape it off. If you're a little concerned about a steady hand, you certainly could tape it off. It would just take a little bit more time. So if you've got the time to spend on it and you're more concerned about your lines being super straight, then you certainly could tape it off. As you see, I'm coming back in with the black paint as well. So once that was all done and completely dry, I'm coming in with some red ribbon.
And I'm just going to make a couple of very simple bows, just like you're tying your shoes. And then I'm sticking my thumbs in the loops and holding that taut and then pulling the tails with the rest of my hands because I'm trying to get it nice and tight without getting the bow too large. And then once I had that the way I wanted it, I went ahead and created a second one the same exact size or as close as I could get it. And then I dovetailed my ends so that I would have two bows. So there are our two bows. Now I'm going to attach those with some hot glue to the top of the ornament. You can see I had painted that little cap, for lack of a better term. What is the name of that thing that sticks on top of the ornament? I don't even know what it's called, but I'm going to call it a cap. But I painted that black, attached the bows, and now I'm coming in with some of my Dollar Tree little tinsel ribbon. It's super pretty. So I tied that off, cut it down, and now I'm tucking that knot down inside so that it's hidden. So it's wedged in between my little bows, and then I'm going to come back in with some more hot glue just to make sure everything is nice and secure and that knot isn't going to end up sliding out and showing. I love this. Tell me what you think. DIY number 5.
All right, it's not chicken wire. I think it's called rabbit wire, rabbit fencing. I don't know. It's something you can make rabbit cages out of and things like that. And I've had it in my stash for a while. I've made other things with it, and I am going to be trying to lay it out flat here. I put on protective gloves. You can see me kind of counting the number of squares here because I want to make sure that I am measuring this out right to make a box. Right? So essentially I counted half the number of squares that it was tall. I think it was about 30 squares tall if you look at it from bottom to top there. And I counted out about half that many for each of my 4 sides of my soon-to-be box. Hopefully that makes sense. And I am going to be leaving the bottom part of the box open. So I am counting in about those 15 squares again. I am bending it over somewhat so that I get it to be able to go to a right angle. And then I'm going to do that all the way around until it turns into kind of a rectangle shape. So I'm going to be forming this. When you work with this stuff, you do want to make sure you wear protective gloves because it is very pokey. So you don't want to injure yourself. I kept getting it caught on my sweater sleeves here, but just be careful when you're working with stuff like this. And then I am going to be using my, I think those are, I'm trying to remember what they're called. They're a special kind of shear that can cut thin metal. So anyway, I am going to continue to form this, and I cut one part of it down to kind of create a flap. This is a little harder to explain than I thought it might be, but hopefully you'll be understanding based on what you're seeing me do. So I'm bending that in. That's going to be the top of my box, and I'm going to cut off the rest of the excess. So that is why I had done half of the number of squares for each of the sides, because I knew I was going to be putting a lid on it essentially, and then cutting the excess off. So now I'm going to be putting it together. I'm just kind of working the ends in to each other and using my needle nose pliers to wrap the wires around the other part of the frame. So gonna go ahead and do the same thing with the lid. I'm going to kind of press it down. I kind of bent each of those little ends so that it would make it easier for me to tuck them into the other little squares where it was coming together. I don't know how else to describe this, so hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying. Now that edge was a finished edge, but I needed those little ends to be loose so that I could poke those through on the other side of the lid, so to speak. And now this is the bottom, and I'm just bending all of the little pokies in so that they don't poke me. So now I've picked out a couple of types of ribbon. How cute are those gnomes? These are a couple of Kirkland brand ribbons that I picked up from my local Costco. Love their ribbon. And I am just going to trim off a piece that'll go from the top, middle, and then wrap around down underneath. Now, you could, if you have a ribbon that doesn't have a specific pattern to it, you could wrap it from one part of the bottom all the way up and around. But the reason I chose to do it this way is because I want all my gnomes to be right side up. I don't want any of my little guys to be upside down on sides of the package. I'm basically making this look like a gift. So gonna be adding some hot glue to each of the ends here. As you can see, make sure you use your little protective finger protectors, because the hot glue clearly is hot. I did burn myself a little bit before I grabbed that first finger protector. So just be careful, you know, and you'll be good to go. So I've got it on all four sides, and now I'm going to create a bow. So I'm creating a loop and trying to figure out how large it needs to be based on the size of my little box here. And I started trying to figure out how I wanted to create the bow. I was kind of offsetting the loops to see if I could create a bow with multiple loops. But ultimately, I decided I was going to do each layer, so to speak, separately. And so I created that loop, and now I'm going to be also finishing it off with the complementing or contrasting, however you want to say it, ribbon. So I'm going to be making 4 of these loops. I do put a little dab of hot glue at the to connect them, just because I find it easier to work with once they're totally kind of sealed there. I didn't use a lot of hot glue, just a tiny little dot to get it to stay together. And you can see these tails that I've cut are a little bit longer than the loop itself. Ultimately, I did make them about the same length as those that were used for the loops, and that seemed to work out well as far as the look that I was going for. But as you can see, I'm using this to tie off my loops to make my bow. So the tails are actually a little bit different than the bow itself, and I'm going to layer these on top of each other. Here I'm using my hot glue, and I am just going to keep alternating the loops until I have all 8 loops kind of offset from one another. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I've got the fun little tails sticking out just to give it a little bit more interest. I had seen these in a little shop in North Carolina when I went to go and visit my son recently, and I thought they were so adorable, and I had to recreate them. So here it is with the bow all made, and I am just making sure that this is the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and dovetail each of those little ends with the buffalo check. And once I have that done, I'll then go ahead and glue down my bow. So I'm just making sure that it's looking centered. I'm going to use a generous amount of hot glue right there in the center, and then press my bow down. And again, just make sure that I've got it centered all around on all edges. I am loving this project, you guys. All right, so now I've got from the Dollar Tree, this is a little string of lights. It's 20 little lights. And I'm going to go ahead and tuck them up inside. This is why I've left the base open, and you can see that's the twist tie that came around the lights, and I'm going to use that. I just cut it in 2, and I'm going to be tucking that through the light strand, and then also up through the inside of the mesh of the box to attach it inside of there. So I'm going to show you right here. You can see where I've got it connected. It's kind of on the other side of the ribbon, so you can't even see it. And then I was like, Corie, you silly, you should have threaded it through the mesh, because now I've got the cord that, you know, yeah. So I went ahead and I undid it. So now that I know what I'm doing and how I want it to work, I went ahead and I threaded all of the lights through the base of the box, and I had left the twist ties inside there, so I was able to just go ahead and tuck them back in and twist tie them down, and then I was all set in that regard. Now you can leave it just like that. Oh, and there they are with the lights all lit up. Super cute. Now you can leave it like that, but I decided I was going to embellish it a little bit more. I grabbed a couple of picks from the Dollar Tree that I have in my stash, and I'm going to cut these all apart and use some of the pieces here to embellish around the top of the bow. So, or around the top of the gift, under the bow and around the bow. So I had pushed all of the little leaves to the top near the pine cones or whatever else you want to call those little pieces, and then trimmed it off. And so I'm tucking it all in, and once I have everything the way I like it, because if you've followed me for any length of time, you know I'm visual and I don't like to commit until I like the way it looks. Now you can see me hot gluing everything into place, and now we're all done. Let me know what you think of this one.
DIY number 6. So for this, we are going to be using the polymer clay again. And this was supposed to be a really cute and easy project, but it kind of went sideways. You'll see what I mean. But it was using the red and the white. I created 2 little balls of clay. They were supposed to be the same size. And now I'm using my blade to cut each ball into 6 slices that are supposed to be the same size. So I did pretty well with this part of it. And once I had all of that done, I needed to piece them together, alternating the red and the white. So we were actually going to have 2 of these and alternating red and white, 6 pieces each. And then I was supposed to use, so I'm rolling them together a little bit just to get them to be cohesive. Then I was supposed to use like a plastic lid, but I didn't have a plastic lid handy. So I went ahead and tried to use, you're gonna see in a second, this bin that I had on hand. I was like, oh, well, maybe this will work. And yeah, it wasn't working. So I pulled out a glass piece that I had with a flat bottom and tried to do it with that. And yeah, it just wasn't working the way that I had envisioned or the way that I'd seen online. So I was like, well, let me try the second one and see if I can get this one to work. And they're supposed to be like those little Starlight mints, you know, the little peppermint candies that are swirly. And yeah, I just wasn't really happy with these at all. So I mean, I guess they look kind of cool, but wasn't quite what I was going for. So I ended up giving up on it, and you'll see in just a second, I'm kind of like, well, what do I do? Yeah, no. So I smushed them together, and plan B is this inspiration photo. So we're going to be making this little Christmas tree. So I went ahead and took that red and white that I'd started to smush together, and I liked the marble effect, so I went ahead and went with that. But one thing I learned about polymer clay as I was trying to figure out how to actually work with it, because I did a little research and trying to figure it out, is that you can mix all of the colors together to create unique colors. So now I've got this whole rainbow there, right? But I could actually create additional colors by mixing the clays together. So that I thought was really neat. Now I'm rolling this out, and it was just getting too thin. And so one other little trick I had found online was to use popsicle sticks or craft sticks alongside of it and use your little rolling pin, which for me this happens to be from a deco mesh spool. I just saved it, but hey, it's working fine. And rolling it over those craft sticks helps to keep it a uniform thickness, and it worked great. So I'm just using different colors, and here you can see me rolling out a teeny little snake again because I figured, oh, I'll use this as making stripes on my dark green. I'll have light green on my dark green. And I just did a whole bunch of different patterns and colors. And then I went ahead and kind of rolled that in to the dark green just to make sure that it was one. I made my little base. This is purple. This was out of a bunch of leftover scraps that I had that I wanted to be able to use. And then I made a bunch of little divots, and I'm putting little Christmas balls on this layer in a couple of different colors. And yeah, I'm just having fun with it. It was reminding me of my Play-Doh days when I was a little kid, or when my children were little. It's been years since I've done anything with Play-Doh or clay. I mean, well, I honestly haven't really worked all that much with clay. So I just recently worked with clay for my little critters. But yeah, other than that. So now I'm going through and I'm punching holes in the top and bottom of each of these pieces. I'm just using my piercing tool and making sure that I've got a hole kind of jiggered in for each of those so that we'll be able to string this together after it's baked. So now that it's baked, and I don't know if you can tell that I did overbake these a little bit, but my little snowman's off there in the corner, so you can kind of see him too. But I am stringing these together using some of these gold beads. So I am putting it up through the hole, putting a bead on, going back down through the same hole, so it's locking the bead in place. Up through the hole, bead on, down through the hole, same hole, and that bead is just getting locked in place that way. And that's what I did all the way up the entire length of the little tree, right through to the tippy top of our star. And so then once that was all secured on there, I went ahead and tied off a loop at the top to serve as our hanger. And you can see it spinning and spinning. This is such a fun piece. I really enjoyed making this, and it's a lot of fun, but it's kind of hard to show. So here is the side by side. Theirs is on the left and mine is on the right. DIY number 7.
This is my inspiration picture. It was something that I saw on Pinterest. I thought it was really pretty. So I have these slices of wood from a tree that we cut down. My brother had sliced them up for me. And then this is a leftover Dollar Tree wreath form that I'd already pulled out the middle ring from. I tried to pull it apart and it was pretty solid. So I ended up just having to clip out all of those little connectors. So I'm just trying to figure out how it's going to sit on there, and I used a chenille stem and just wrapped that around and around. I used a dark green because I figured that would blend in with my greenery. So once I had all 3 rings set, I went ahead and grabbed these garland ties from the Dollar Tree. I believe they come in a set of 10, it might be 12. And I bent them in half, as you saw, and I just started wrapping them around the rings, the hoops. So at the base, I was doing it around all 3 hoops, and I just kept kind of tying them on there and setting it up to see how it was looking and try to gauge trying to gauge how many of these I needed to have on there. And as I started working my way up and around the hoops, I went from wrapping them around all 3 hoops to wrapping them around just the 2 hoops, and then eventually just around that outer hoop. And I just kept working it until I made it about halfway around, a little more than halfway around the hoop as far as where the branches landed. So I just kept checking my inspiration picture and kind of kept going until I had it about where I wanted it there. So fluffed it all up a little bit, and then I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to anchor it. So I did use my staple gun, and those were, I think they're 1/2 inch staples. They are whatever the longest staple is that you can get for these little staple guns. So I did that, and then I used a generous amount of hot glue just so that it could get down in there and make its way into the wood as well. So now I am taking fairy lights, and I had shared these with you a few videos back, I think, but I do have them in my Amazon store, and there's a link in my description box for these if you have interest. So the link is to my Amazon storefront, and these are in the storefront. So I just wrapped them around and around on each of the hoops, and I did turn them on just so I could see where they were and how I was positioning them, and I thought it also might make it a little bit easier for you to see what I was doing. Once I got up to the top, I did kind of jump from that top hoop into the middle hoop, but in a place where the greenery would camouflage that. And then I worked my way back down. Once I ran out of length, I ended up using 2 sets of the fairy lights. These are wire basically. So as I'm wrapping them, they are kind of staying put, right? So it's like little lights on wire. I don't know how else to describe it, but when I ran out of the one, I just secured it down by wrapping it around and it stayed put. And then I started with a new strand. So worked my way all the way back down. So I've got it around all 3 hoops, and then I tucked it under the greenery. And I did not glue down those little on-off switches, by the way, because I want to be able to access them and replace the batteries if and when needed. Excuse me. So now I'm ripping apart one of my little picks. As you know, I'm always pulling these things apart and putting some little poinsettias in here. There's a pine cone, some berries, and you can decorate these however you want. I'm going to be adding some of those little Dollar Tree bulbs. These are all Dollar Tree materials except for the fairy lights and that wood slab that's from my backyard. So I'm just positioning everything where it makes my heart happy. So gluing down the bulbs, and then I'm going to drop a little red one in there as well. And that's it, you guys. I love this, and I hope you like it too.
DIY number 8.
So for this project, I have a couple of ornaments from the Dollar Tree, a pair of socks from the Dollar Tree, an old ornament from my stash, and some other items from the Dollar Tree that are left over from other projects. I'm taking one of those socks and I just cut off the little foot part of it, and I'm going to drop some of these glass beads that I picked up from the Dollar Tree in the bottom to weight it down. And then I was thinking, because I'm out of fiberfill again, if you have fiberfill, this is where you'd want to use it. But I thought I'd use some of this packing material. It was just too stiff, so I pulled it out of there and decided to shred it, and then I put it back in, and it worked much better. A little bit messy, but it did the job. Once I had that all filled, I went ahead and sealed up the top. I just used a little twist tie, twisted that around there, made sure that it was good to go. So now I'm looking at the other part of that sock, trying to figure out if I can use that for what I'm doing or if I need something else. It's not quite long enough. So I'm like, you know what? I think I've got another sock in my stash. So I went back and grabbed another Dollar Tree sock. This is left over from another project. So it's the singleton sock, and I am just pulling it down over and figuring out how it will fit. So I went ahead and shredded up some more of that packing material and stuffed the little sock, which is going to be our hat if you hadn't already figured that out. And once I had that good to go, I put it back down over the little body. So I'm just making sure it's all good. And now I'm going to take this little gold ornament from the Dollar Tree, and I cut off the little knobby thing, and I'm going to tuck it in under the hat and glue it down. Just using a little bit of hot glue there. And then I'm also going to bring my hot glue in, and I'm going to use that around the sides of the little nose. and make sure that the hat is going to stay in place where I want it there. And then I went ahead and also sealed around the edge so that the hat was nice and secure. So now I'm taking this leftover dust mop thing from the Dollar Tree. Obviously, this has already been cut once before. I had it used it for another project, and I'm just measuring where I want to cut it for this project. And I'll just tell you, this stuff sheds a lot. I ended up with it all over my shirt. So forgive my appearance later when you see little white things all over me. But once I had it cut down to size, I went ahead and glued it down with my hot glue and just made sure that was all nice and secure. So now I'm cutting the little hanger off of this cute little ornament that I had picked up last year. I thought it was super cute, and I know they're little elf legs, but they are going to be our gnome's legs. And I'm just using a generous amount of hot glue, setting his little bum right down in there, and he's got legs. So now I'm using some leftover yarn, and this is that chenille yarn. Again, something else that kind of has a lot of fuzz to it, but I wanted a nice fluffy little pom-pom. So I wrapped it around my fingers as many times as I could. I'm tying off the center with a piece of sturdy twine, making sure that's nice and tight. I'll trim off the excess, and then I'm going to cut all of the loops on here and create a pom-pom. And because it's crazy yarn, I just went ahead and gave it a haircut and trimmed it up until it was looking like a pom-pom should. And then I used some hot glue to secure that at the tip of his little hat. So I decided that I hadn't cut down the beard enough. I had just sent a quick picture to my sister, and she was laughing and said that he looked like a snowball. So I decided I was going to remove a little bit more of his beard because I could definitely see what she was saying. So here he is, and he definitely needs some arms. He looks a little funny without arms here. So I took that leftover piece of sock that I couldn't use before, and I am going to cut out the be mine so that I have just that solid piece, and then I'll also cut the stripes off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the stripe part off and set that aside, and now I'm going to cut this in half. So I'm just folding it in half, cutting it down the middle so I make sure that my both sides are even, and then I am going to create little arms by folding it inside out. I'm going to use my hot glue again, and I'm going to create a little seam all the way down the length of it and kind of curving it at the end because it's going to be like little mittens. And I thought it was so great that I had that white band at the end there so that I could do that. So I did that to both of them, and once they were dry, or cool I should say, I went ahead and turned them right side out, and so I have my little arms. I'm just using a paintbrush to help kind of push the sock fabric right side out. Now I'm using a little bit more of that packing material. I just pulled a strip of it off because I just wanted the arms to have a little bit of structure to them. So you could use fiber fill if you want for this as well. So, but it doesn't need a whole lot, just enough to give it a little bit of structure, like I said, so it doesn't just flop. Sealed that up with some hot glue, and now I've got my little arms. I'm just going to figure out where I'm going to place them on either side of him, and you guessed it, more hot glue. So sealing his arms to the sides of his body so that his little hands meet in the front. I love him so much. He makes me happy. Then I'm taking this little Christmas tree ornament from my stash, and I am just going to have him hold the ornament. So again, just a little bit of hot glue on each of his little mittened hands, and then he'll be all good to go with his little Christmas tree. But I love him so much, and I hope you love him too.
DIY number 9.
All right, now I have these scrap pieces of foam core board, and these are tags gift tags from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to pull out 2 of each of these styles. Now, I'm using gift tags. You could use anything you want for this. If you find a picture in a magazine that you like, or, you know, I don't know, decoupage paper or scrapbook paper with a cute image on it. I don't know. I'm using the gift tags because I liked the shape of them. I actually thought about using these with the galvanized little tags, but the ones I have are larger than these little tags. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to do it on foam core board. Now I was trying to fit them all on my smaller piece, but it was just shy of being large enough. So I went with my bigger piece. I'm just getting them all lined up, trying to figure out how I want them placed. I'm only working with one of the sets right now. Using my school glue, I'm going to glue these right down onto the foam core board. Now, the reason I've got 2 of each design, and the reason why I'm only using 1 of each of them right now, is because I'm going to make these double-sided, right? So I wanted to make sure that no matter which way you looked at these ornaments, they were going to look the same. Now, you could certainly mix it up and make them 2-sided, but I decided I wanted them to be uniform. So now once I had them all glued down, the edges were curling up on me a little bit. So I just put some parchment paper down over it and held it down for a couple of minutes until it was completely secured and not curling on me. Now I'm using my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to cut right along the edge of the tags. Now I found that if I just did a really light score alongside the tag first, rather than trying to dig right through, I had a better time with not cutting into the tag. I found that if I tried to go for it right away, I wasn't following a straight line, and I ended up cutting into the tag a little bit. So I was just scoring very lightly the paper alongside of it first to give my X-Acto knife a guide, and then I went for it. Hopefully that makes sense. So now I've got them all cut out. I'm going to take my other set and glue them onto the backs. I'm just kind of sliding it around to get the glue all over the surface, and so that it would be glued right up to the edge. So hopefully, because you see, you know, when you put the glue on, it's not all the way up to the edge. So I just kind of set it down and slide it around to make sure that all my edges had glue on it without getting really goopy, right? So once those were all set and dry, I went ahead with my little pokey tool. This is from the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm just poking out the foam core board that is in the circle. You know, the tags already have that hole punch in them. So I am just making multiple punctures in that little circle. And then I'm using the tool to kind of dig that extra foam core out, and then I kind of stuck it in there and rolled the edge of the pokey tool around to smooth out the inner edge. Are you understand what I'm trying to explain? Sometimes I wonder if I make any sense at all, but I think you guys are probably getting it. So now I am using some jute cord. This is from Walmart. I got this huge roll of it. I think it was like $5 or $6 from Walmart, and it lasts me a really long time. I love it. And I'm just gonna glue this along the edge. Now, I had hoped it was going to be wide enough for the edge of these. It really wasn't, so I ended up having to go around the edge twice. You can kind of see there that you can see the white foam core underneath, or below, I should say, this first round of edging. So no big deal. I just, I got to the end. I was hoping I could just keep going, but I figured it was going to lay flatter and hide the foam core better if I trimmed it off. So that's what I ultimately did. So you saw me trim it off. I sealed it up at the top, and now I'm going to come back through again with my next layer. I'm just going to wrap it around again. Now I'm starting at the top in the middle because I want to hide that seam, and I'll be able to hide that with my hanger in just a minute. Now at first I did it with just a single strand, and you know, the same, yeah. I did it this way. I ended up not liking it. You're going to see me untie it in just a second because I was like, that just looks too boring or something. I don't know. It doesn't look finished, and it wasn't hiding my seam. So instead, I folded it in half. I stuck it back through. It took a little bit of work there to just kind of push that double layer through, but I got it. And then I'm going to flip the ends through that loop that I've created, sticking them through there so it kind of knots it. And then I just had to kind of work with it because, again, it was a little snug through that hole with the twine doubled, or the jute cord doubled. I probably I could have used twine. That probably would have worked a little bit better, but it's uniform, right? So tied my knot again, and now this one is done. So I did the same thing with all of them, got them all situated, and here they are. I think they are so cute, but let me know what you think.
DIY number 10.
So I have a bunch of these ornaments from the Dollar Tree that I picked up last year. I've got 3 different sizes, and I'm going to be using one of each. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the little nubby thing that holds the ornament hanger, if you will. And I'm using my hot glue. I showed you I have a little teeny wood round that's out of my stash from a set of wood pieces that I'd gotten from the Dollar Tree. And just using hot glue to secure the largest ball to the wood round, the next size ball to the large one, and then the smallest one is going to go on top. You're probably already guessing what it is that I'm making here, but I'm using my home decor Adirondack white chalk paint to give that a really good coat of paint. And now I am using my green cotton yarn. This is also from the Dollar Tree. And I cut off about 9 strands of yarn, not about, it was 9 strands. So I tied a knot in that. I went ahead and braided it, and now I am fraying the ends of the yarn. I had tied it off on both ends and just creating a little tiny scarf here. So once I had that all frayed, I trimmed off both ends, and there is our cute little scarf. Just a very simple braid, so nothing fancy there. So now I have this red felt that I'd gotten from Arteza. It's adhesive felt, and I had just grabbed one of my bottles of paint that was about the right size for the circle that I wanted to cut, used that as a pattern, cut it out. Now I'm looking to create the next part of the little hat that I'm making. So I've got the brim was that large circle, and now I am making the top part of the hat, and I feel like somebody at some point shared with me what that is called. I can't remember. So at any rate, I am going to go ahead and apply that, and then I am going to flip it over and get an approximate size for the top of the hat to close it off with another piece of felt. So this is a very basic, very simple way of doing this. As you can see, I'm pulling off the backing from the felt to stick that on there. And then I went into my stash of all my little mini jingle bells, and I pulled out a few green ones. You'll be seeing me using these jingle bells on another project later on, but just using some hot glue to add a few little jingle bells to our snowman's hat for a little bit of interest. So now I have from my stash again, this is also from the Dollar Tree. They are little twig-like things. I don't know, it's a pick of twigs with little snowflakes all over it. So I am using my craft knife here to just slice some slits in the hat so that it will conform to his little head a little bit more. And then I peeled away some of that backing, but not all of it, because I don't want stuff to get stuck up underneath his hat. So just enough to get it to stick to his little head. And now applying his arms with hot glue and just adding a little bit more hot glue so that it's nice and secure. And then I have some more fake snow from the Dollar Tree in my stash, and I'm sorry, I'm a little off camera here, but I'm just sprinkling some of that into the hot glue to camouflage the hot glue with a little bit of extra snow. And you'll be seeing me use that fake snow in another project a little bit later as well. So now just taking his little scarf and tying it around his neck, and he's already so cute. I love snowmen. What is your favorite thing to decorate with during the winter season? Mine is snowmen. I absolutely love snowmen. So I'm just using my Arteza acrylic paint markers to create his little face and his buttons, and doing his nose in the orange acrylic paint marker. And that's it. He is so sweet. I love him, and I hope you love him too.
DIY number 11.
I have a Dollar Tree canvas and a little light set from the Dollar Tree as well. I am excited about this one, you guys. I started out with my Cricut. I went into the design space and I was just looking for merry and bright. I was looking for something that was already created for cutting specifically, so I filtered it there. And I found a bunch of different designs of merry and bright. I selected a few, dropped them onto my little canvas, and then I decided which one I was going to use. So here you can see I'm just kind of spreading them out on the canvas, trying to just take a look at them all together here. And I finally settled on that top left one. So I'm just deleting off the others, and I'm going to work with this one. The neat thing about this particular image is that it is grouped, and I discovered this by accident, that I was going to be able to ungroup it, and that was going to allow me to manipulate it, not only move the words around a little bit, but I was able to delete out those other little pieces that I didn't need or want for this particular project. So once I had it all done the way I wanted, I went ahead and cut it out on my Cricut. You can see I am just using a scrap piece of vinyl. If you guys have followed me for a while and you've seen me working with vinyl, I tend to trim off all the extra parts of my vinyl and I put them away for another time. So here was an opportunity to use one of my little scraps. And I went ahead and weeded it all out. I'm leaving the words in this instance. And so then once I had it all weeded, I got it onto my transfer tape. This is a piece of transfer tape that has been used many a time. And I was actually worried that it wasn't going to adhere to the vinyl, but it did very nicely. So then I went ahead and I set it down on my canvas. Now, I always struggle a little bit with getting vinyl to stick to canvases, especially if I haven't painted them first. So I knew that it was probably going to be a little bit of work to get this off. Fortunately, because this transfer tape has been used so many times and it definitely has quite a bit of fuzz on it, I didn't have too hard a time. So I'm just working slowly, making sure that all of my little ends are staying down and working my way across the canvas, just making sure that everything is settled down. And this is sped up about 2.5 times just to give you an idea. So once I had worked my way down to the other side, I just want to make sure that everything is on there nice and solid. So I flipped it over because this gives me more pressure, right? With the canvas, there's a lot of give. So this is my moss chalk paint. You can use whatever color you want, whatever makes you happy, but I'm literally painting over the entire thing. And once it's dry, I'm going to be peeling up all of those letters and revealing the words, so they are now going to be kind of knocked out in white. Now, I did have a little bit of bleeding here. What I probably should have done is paint over it in white first and then paint over it in green, because that would have kind of sealed in my letters, and then any bleeding would have been in white and you wouldn't have been able to see it. Didn't occur to me at the time, even though I do that regularly, but at any rate, that's a good way to avoid the bleeding. So now you can see I've got my little light set that I've taken out from the Dollar Tree. I started unraveling that, but then the bleeding was bothering me a little bit, so I did decide to go in and touch it up here and there. I didn't go crazy with touching it up. I decided that from a little bit of a distance you couldn't see it anyway, so I left well enough alone. And now I am coming in with my weeding tool. You just need some sort of a sharp object, just something that will pierce the canvas. And I am putting 10 strategic holes in here. I'm placing the holes where I want my lights to poke through, because we're going to be using our lights coming through the back side of this. And now I'm just using a mechanical pencil to widen those holes a little bit more so that I'll be able to fit my little lights through without any trouble from the back. So now I'm going to grab my lights, I'm going to poke them through each of those little holes that I've created. And once I have those all set, I am going to come in with some hot glue. In just a second, you'll see. So I finally stopped flipping it back and forth because my little lights kept falling out on me. So I've just got it upside down. I'm poking all my lights through. And then, as I mentioned, I'm going to come in with, see, I got to stop flipping it over. So I came in with my hot glue just to make sure everything was secure and it wasn't going to pull out on me. So you just want to be careful with that hot glue gun though. Don't get that metal part too close to the wires or you could potentially melt it. So I was just kind of drizzling the hot glue down on that. And now this is a piece of canvas that I had removed from a frame on a completely different video, completely different project, and I had it just sitting in my stash waiting to be used for another project. So here we are, and I am just going to fold over the edges to create clean edges, and we're going to use this to seal up the back of our project here. But now I'm only going to be putting the hot glue across the top piece of this, because these lights are battery operated and I want to be able to replace the batteries as needed. So this is Velcro. This is from the Dollar Tree. They're little Velcro dots. So I'm going to pull some of these out of here. And I suppose I could have done Velcro on the entire thing. I don't know why I decided to hot glue the top. So you could do it however you would like. But I, for whatever reason, I think originally I was thinking about hot gluing maybe half of it. And then ultimately I decided no, that I really wanted to be able to get in there a little bit more. So I wanted flexibility, let's say. So I ended up Velcroing 3 sides. You totally could Velcro all 4, whatever is going to make things easiest for you. So once I had those all set, I knew I was going to be good to go. I'm seeing if I can get it to stand up here. It didn't want to cooperate. So I'm going to use a tongue depressor stick on the back side of it. I just used some hot glue along the edge of the tongue depressor stick, and I lined it up with the bottom edge of the frame. And this will just give it a little bit more of a platform, so to speak, to stand upright. So now I have my little screwdriver set from the Dollar Tree and my batteries that I'm going to put in here. These little light packs, they have a teeny tiny little screw. So this little screwdriver set that I got from the Dollar Tree has been awesome for this because they're just tiny little screws. And so anytime you have, or screwdrivers, so whenever you have tiny little screws, this little kit comes in handy. And so I'm able to tuck my little battery pack in there, seal it up with my Velcro, and this is done.
DIY number 12. So this is my inspiration picture for this DIY. It's a cute little snowman. Love it. Arteza has sent me polymer clay. This is 42 colors of polymer clay, and they've got these cute little tools in here, as well as a whole bunch of fun little doodads that came in the box. I'm going to show you in a second. I'm also showing you my Dollar Tree tools that I had picked up as well. But they've got things for making jewelry and little charms and things like that. So I just pulled out one of the little, I'm not really sure what you'd call it, no, it's not a grommet, but anyway, it's what I'm going to use for my ornament. And meanwhile, I am taking out all of the colors because I wanted to be able to show you everything that they have here, and I am just loving this rainbow. So as I got everything organized, I was thinking about the colors that I wanted to use for my little snowman. And you guys, this is the first time ever that I'm using polymer clay. I have never worked with it before. Oh, I was really excited about the gold and the copper that were included in there. So, but this is the first time I've ever used polymer clay. So we're gonna see how it goes. All my colors picked out, and I am going ahead and starting with the white. And with polymer clay, I've learned you have to massage it and get it nice and soft and kind of warm with your body warmth, if you will, with your hands. So you've got to kind of play with it a little bit to get it softened, and then you can start to mold it. So I created the body and then the head, and now I am also forming some little arms for our snowman. And once I have that done, I am going to work on his little hat. So I'm kind of rolling it out like a snake, but really wide at one end and then skinnier at the top. And this is going to be his hat. Now, when I applied this, I kind of put it on top of his head, like covering part of his head. If I had to do it over again, I would have just put it up higher than that and not covered so much of the white. So just a word to the wise there. So now I am using some more of the white. They actually had two different colors of white in here. One was titanium. I want to say the other was, I want to say platinum, but I don't think that's right. I'll have to look and let you know. But the whites, I couldn't really tell a difference when I was working with them, but I definitely can see a difference on camera as I watch it back, and then also in person after it was baked. Now, I unfortunately did over bake these little guys, or this little guy, so he didn't stay a bright white because I messed up, but I still thought he turned out super cute. So now I had rolled out some more of the white in a snake, some blue in a snake, and some green, you can see. And now I'm pulling these three strands together and rolling them together gently and then twisting them and just trying to roll them a little bit to get them to be a little bit cohesive. Now I don't want the colors all smooshed together, so I'm trying to be gentle with it, but I do want them to look like it's one solid piece. And then I was just flattening it out. And this is going to be a scarf. So I've lifted him up and placed him on there. And I'm going to cut off the parts of the scarf where they come together. And then I'll also create the tails for the scarf with two other little slices. And as you can see, I'm using my craft knife for this with the blade pulled all the way out. I did look up a couple of YouTube videos on how to work with polymer clay, and one of the people I was watching was using a blade, just a regular razor blade all the time, and I didn't have one, so this was the next best thing for me. So now that I have this little scarf fashioned, I am taking a couple of other little pieces of the green, and I'm using one of the tools that came with my polymer clay. And I don't know if I'm using this right or not. Like I said, I've not used polymer clay before. I don't know what any of these tools really do, so I'm just kind of winging it, but creating a little bit of holly leaves for some decoration on this little guy's hat. And now, you guys, Arteza has given me a new coupon code, so that is available in the description box for 10% off if you have any interest in any of the Arteza products. So I'm coming in, I made his little mouth, and now I am making his little cheeks. And yeah, my proportions were a little bit off based on the inspiration picture, and you'll see at the end, because I had a couple of people ask me if I would please show the side by side at the end, so I've done that for this video, and this one is actually kind of funny. I think he's super cute, but looking at it side by side, I'm like, please don't judge. So now I am just getting his eyes together. So teeny little tiny pieces of the black and putting those in place. And I had created just a little divot beforehand. You can see me making divots now for his buttons and then just placing the buttons in those divots. So just, I guess, gives them a place to rest and maybe helps them to meld a little bit better with the clay. This is just my best guess. So now I'm rolling out some red and rolling a little bit of the white that I had left over from before that I'd cut off, and I'm going to do similar to what I did with the scarf, put them together, but then I'm just going to twist very gently. I guess I did roll it a little bit there, but just twisting it gently, and then I'm going to take my little cutting tool that came with my kit and going to curve that into a little candy cane that I will place on his little hand. I love my little kitty cane. I thought it was so cute. So now I am trying to get some more red ready for little berries to go on his holly leaves. So everything with the polymer clay seems to be in miniature, and it's interesting to try to work with and try to get it the way you want it. So it was fun. So I tucked in that little piece that we'll be using as his hanger, and there he is. And then he'll have to be baked. And here's the side by side. DIY number 13. All right, I have a form from the Dollar Tree. It's a football wreath form. I have some foam core that you can see I am cutting down to fit the base of that cylinder vase slash candle holder, and I am going to put this one piece right down on top of the wreath form. I'm not using this as a wreath, so you'll see in just a second what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to kind of create a flat surface there as best as I can. I'm just trying to make sure that it's going to end up being level in the end, so just adjusting as needed. And I'm going to grab my hot glue and drop a whole bunch of hot glue down into that crevice that's been created by forcing the foam down onto the wreath form. So once that's cool, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and I've cut the rest of my floral foam down into little pieces here, and I'm going to place them around the football form in strategic places so that I have a fair amount of coverage. And then I'll flip it back over again, and I'm going to secure it with hot glue just like I did that very first one. So now I've got a whole bunch of picks from my stash. Most of these are from Dollar Tree, but not all. And I'm securing, I'm sorry, I'm a little out of frame. I'm adding a whole bunch of hot glue to the bottom of my glass vase, and I'm going to secure that down to the floral foam. I put the glue on the vase in hopes that it would be less likely to melt my foam. So now I am coming in with some picks that I have cut down. These are like icy twigs from the Dollar Tree. I was starting to say before, most of my picks are from the Dollar Tree, but I do have some that are thrown in from Hobby Lobby that I've had in my stash for quite some time. But true to form, I am cutting everything down and just kind of sticking it in as needed. I'm starting at the base of the form and working my way up. And now I was just showing you that I've got these, they are evergreen ties. There's another word for them that is escaping me at the moment, but they're from the Dollar Tree as well. Garland ties, that's what I was looking for. And I am placing these strategically around the form as well. And I'm going to come in now with some deco mesh from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to make little bubbles with it. And they're going to be, you know, I don't really measure things, you guys. I do everything by sight, but if I had to guess, I would say these are probably 8-inch lengths. So I'm just creating little bubbles and cutting it off, and then I'm tucking that end down into the little garland ties and twisting that off to make sure that they are nice and secure. And that's all I'm doing with those. And I'm going to create one of those little bubbles at every place I have a garland tie. Now I'm going to come in with more picks. I've got a whole bunch of poinsettia picks that I'm going to use,
And then I've got some other flowers. I have pine cones. I have little beads, all kinds of different things that you're going to be seeing me use as we work our way through here. And I am just going to make sure that I am kind of spreading them out and around on the form so that everything is a little bit balanced. Now I've got these champagne flowers that I'm coming in with. They are also, I don't know what kind of flower they are. They look like little mini poinsettias to me, but and then coming in with, these are from the Dollar Tree as well. These are like, I don't know, they're like gold glittery twig things. I don't really know what they're supposed to emulate, but they're pretty and they're blingy. So this is going to have a little bit of bling in it. Not a whole lot, but some glitter here and there. And then some gold with these gold berries. These berries in particular are from the Hobby Lobby, I could tell you that. I'm looking here. I think it's those berries might be the only thing that ended up in this particular arrangement, so to speak, that were from the Hobby Lobby. I think everything else that you see here was from the Dollar Tree. There might have been a couple of pine cones that I'd gotten in a grab bag or grab box from Michael's, but I'm not even confident about that. I think most everything is pretty much from the Dollar Tree. I do have some white flowers that I'm trimming down now just to help make this lush and full, because I was starting to run out of my poinsettia picks. I'm going to have to replenish my stash on those. But you know what? You can use whatever types of flowers or greenery you want for this type of a project. Hopefully you've seen by now that this is going to be a centerpiece with a candle in the middle. Once I had it all set and ready to go, I grabbed some sand. This is just a natural sand color from the Dollar Tree. I was wishing that I'd used white sand. If I had to do it over again, I would use white, but you know, this worked out just fine. I dropped in a gold candle and this was done.
DIY number 14.
All right, this is a little box, I believe from Michael's, that my sister had picked up for me a while back. It was $1 and then it was on sale 20% off, I think. So I've got a bunch of, I think they're called finishing nails. They're tiny nails with tiny little heads on them. They do have heads, but they're small heads. And I'm just banging a whole bunch of these into my little wooden bin, box, whatever you want to call this, until I've got the shape that I want. And then I am going to put my nails away and grab my baker's twine in yellow and white. I'm creating a slip knot here. Now, in hindsight, I should have left a tail, like a decently long tail on here. Of course, I snipped it off thinking I wanted to hide it, but had I left the tail on it, it would have made it easier for me to tie off with the other end when I was finished wrapping this. So I'm right now just going to wrap it in the shape of the star that I'm looking to create. So just like you would draw a star, that's the pattern that I'm following with this. And I'm just kind of twisting it around each nail as I go through to help make it secure. I think I found later that I didn't necessarily have to do that, but that was what I was doing in the beginning. So if you try this project, you can see if you can do it without twisting it around each nail head, and let me know if that works out well for you, because I think you can probably do it that way. But here I am just trying to tie that off and making sure that it's secure so it won't come unraveled. I just kind of had to manipulate it a little bit, and then I'm going to trim it here and tie it off some more. I'm sorry that it's hard to see. I'm kind of weaving it through the design that I've made, kind of, and then pulling it taut. And I did that a couple of times just to make sure that it was kind of tied off. Then I trimmed it off and tucked it down inside the string so that you couldn't see the end. And now this is green twine from the Dollar Tree that I had picked up a while ago. I've had it in my stash probably for a couple of years, to be honest. And I'm going to do the same thing with this. But now I'm a little bit wiser, having tried to figure out how to tie off that star. So I'm going to leave a long tail on this one. It's still a slip knot, attaching it to that first nail. And now I'm going to work my way around to do my little tree here. And I'm going to go back and forth kind of at a diagonal. So I'm skipping some of the nails here and there and then going back to them because I want to make sure that it's a little bit more dynamic than just going back and forth. You certainly can just go back and forth if that's a look that you like, but I really wanted mine to be kind of crisscrossing all over my little tree. So I'm going to work my way all the way up, and then I'll work my way back down again. So if I've got any holes or gaps, those will ultimately get covered on the way back through. But you can see I'm kind of going over it back and forth a little bit anyway, instead of going straight up. So just continuing. And here you see me doing it without twisting it around the nail heads in some places. And it actually worked just fine. So I do think that that might possibly be a way to do it. Worked my way all the way back down to the bottom. And then I was ready to go ahead and tie it off. So you can see my little tail sticking out down there. I left a long tail when I trimmed it off there. And I'm just going to tie it right near the base of the nail that I started with. So tying that in a good knot there, and then I'm going to tuck these strings right up in and under. But I realized the one of them was a little bit too long, so trimmed that off, tucked them in. Now they're hidden. I think this is super cute. And it's pretty much done, except I'm just making sure my nails are all like the same height there. But as you saw, I've got all those nails sticking out in the back. So if you followed me for any length of time, you know I like to have things looking finished, or at least not, you know, a danger or a hazard to somebody who goes to pick something up. So I've got some more of my microfiber cloth that I'm tucking in here, and that's it.
DIY number 15. Okay, for this project, I am using a glass ornament. It's a frosted ornament, and I had used this in another project this past fall when I made some ghosts. So I am repurposing this and just using some hot glue. I am using my jute twine and starting at the very bottom, and I'm just going to go around and around and around, and using hot glue here and there as I go, just to make sure that everything is secured. But I am essentially going to cover this entire frosted glass ornament with the jute cord, or the jute twine. This was a really thin twine. You could certainly use a thicker twine and it would go faster. This is a very simple project. It just takes a little bit of time and patience. And as you start working your way back up the ball, you want to make sure you're pushing the cord down, because it does have a tendency of wanting to slide up because the ball is getting more narrow. So once I get up to the top, I went ahead and cut it off after a long tail and tucked that end back in. And so this is creating our loop. And then I'm going to be using some of those, well, I'm going to tie it off first just to give it a little bit extra support, so it's not having all the weight pulling on just the hot glue that's securing it. But I also have those beads that I want to use again, and so I'm going to string 3 of the larger beads onto my hanger loop. And I'm going to get those all secured in place, tying that off. And then I decided I would like to make a tassel. And I've never made a tassel before, you guys, so here's another first for me today. And so I'm just wrapping it around and around my fingers. I've seen a bunch of crafters make these. I've just never actually made one myself. So I am sure that there is a better way for me to be tying this off than what I'm doing. I'm kind of wrapping it around there, and then I just ended up tying it off. I did see I'm trying to remember her name, from Craft, Eat, and Repeat. She did a tassel that I saw like months ago now, and she had such a cool way of tying it off. So it was like actually part of the tassel. So I need to go back and try and find her video on that. It's been a while since I've watched her channel because I've just been so busy, and so now her first name is escaping me. If you watch her channel, please leave me a comment and remind me what her first name is. I have to go and look for her because I really do love her channel. She's great. So now I'm coming in with my Arteza paint marker in copper, and I'm just writing in Joy for joy. And then I had attached my tassel, and there you have it. DIY number 16. All right, this is a placemat from the Dollar Tree, as well as a tray that I got in the Dollar Tree Plus section at a Dollar Tree in North Carolina while I was visiting my son. And I had picked that up for $5. I was so excited to find this, you guys. I also had a subscriber who shared that Family Dollar sells some of the same things. I guess it's a sister company of Dollar Tree. So FYI, if you didn't already know that, because that was news to me. So I was trying to figure out how I was going to cut down the placemat, and I finally realized I really needed to measure the inside of this. Now, I did have a little bit of an oops here, because I realized it was 14.5 inches was the width. And I was trying to decide how much I was gonna cut off of either end. I decided I was gonna try and be a little conservative and cut off a little bit less than what I needed and kind of work my way in that way. Now, that would have been all fine and good, except for the fact, do you see the error I'm making right now? I'm in at the 1 line, thinking 1 to 14.5. Okay, that's exactly where I need to be. Yeah, no, Corie, no. I basically cut off, well, it would have been a full inch more than what I needed to cut off because I'm starting at the 1 instead of at the 0 on my mat there. But fortunately, I was being conservative, and so I cut off a little too much, but not as much. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, right? So, yeah. So I've got a little bit, I'm like, what did I do? And at this point, I still don't know what I did wrong. So I'm like, but then I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, how much, I'm like, okay, I better measure this again. Maybe I measured it wrong the last time. And right here, I realize, here I'm like looking at it, I'm like measuring it on my mat, and here I'm at the 1 again. I'm like, oh, I need to be the 0. So this one, I was conservative again at first, and I ultimately was able to cut up. For this one, I also did cut off more than I needed to, but this time I did it on purpose because I wanted to make sure that everything looked even top and bottom, and I didn't want it to look funny with like a little teeny bit of the extra buffalo check. I don't know if I'm making any sense whatsoever, but I figured I would create the same amount of border approximately as there was on the sides. So at any rate, I went ahead and I painted painted the tray white with my Adirondack white chalk paint. And once it was dry, I'm going to be able to pop this in here. Now, I was thinking about double-sided tape, and then I completely forgot that that was my idea. So I'm using a little tiny bit of hot glue, and I intentionally did not use a lot of it. I used 1 little dot in every corner because my thought is you could pop these out and interchange them with different
placemats for different seasons, or with different types of messaging on them, or whatever makes you happy, right? And I love that it's a placemat because if you spill something on it, you can just wipe it right up. But let me know what you think of this one.
DIY number 17.
So this is my inspiration picture from Kirkland's. It was $39.99. I am going to create my own version with this round wood pallet sign, I suppose you could say. I don't remember if I got this from Michael's or from Walmart. It was one of those two. It's been in my stash for a while, and I finally decided that this is what I wanted to do with it. So giving it a really rough coat of paint with my home decor Adirondack white chalk paint, leaving some of the wood to kind of show through. Once I had that all nice and dry, I am using one of my Arteza paint markers. This is in a brown color. I'm trying to remember what the brown shade is. I think it's the only like chocolate brown color in there. But I am kind of creating my vine around the outside first. And I'm looking at the picture, to be honest with you, and I'm kind of free forming what I'm doing. Now, this is sped up about 3 times, so you can tell I really am going slow. I'm taking my time. I'm being deliberate about where I want to put these. I might be being a little too careful, if you will. You know, you could totally do this free form. It is not difficult. I am just being a little extra here. So once I had that the way that I wanted it, I'm coming in with another paint marker. This is a chalk paint marker by Arteza, and it's like a cranberry color. I think it was called Wine, but just making little berries around in different places on my vine and just kind of spreading those around. So now I am taking a pencil and I am just kind of getting my letters set and in place. Again, this is sped up about 3 times right now. I'm always tickled when everybody says, "Oh, you've got such beautiful handwriting." I'm like, that is not my handwriting. So I am going to slow it down in just a minute. And so you can see just how slow I really am going with this when I do my hand lettering. Now, obviously this is much larger hand lettering than what I normally do, but you can see I really am drawing these letters. And I love using the pencil because I can erase it when I mess it up and I can get it where I want it. So once I had my basic outline of my letters, I'm coming in with my chalk paint marker and I'm going over it. This is still sped up, you guys. This is still 3 times. Okay, this is normal speed, right? So now I've slowed it down. You can see I'm really taking my time. I am drawing these letters. I am not writing these letters. So I hope that makes some sense. And I hope that that makes you feel a little bit more like this is something you could tackle yourself. You can see how slow I'm going here, right? So it really is drawing. It's taking your time. Don't be afraid to use pencil to get the letters the way you want them before you come in with your paint. And then I'm just going over the pencil really, and I'm just trying to make sure that I am following my guides. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up again for you in just a second, but I did want to slow it down so you can see exactly how much time I take and how deliberate I am. And yeah, so be kind to yourself, take your time, and you can do this. You really can do this. And I'm still in regular speed. Sorry, I guess I figured I would show you a little bit longer how I do this and how long it actually does take me to do it. But I promise you in about 5 more seconds, I'm going to put it back to 3 times the speed. So this won't be as painful to watch. So here we are, sped up again. So now this is 3 times speed. You can see it still looks pretty slow, right? And this is actually at 3 times sped up. And so we'll use some little movie magic to kind of work through this so that you can see how it develops. and you don't have to sit and watch as I do this entire thing. But I hope that you're enjoying this video. If you haven't already subscribed, I would be grateful for your subscription if you're enjoying these projects. I've been really enjoying all of my journey over YouTube, and I appreciate y'all so, so much. So now I have shown you that I'm going to be using my Waverly chalk paint. The one I'm using right now is celery, and the other color that I have there is fern. I did consider using more paint markers for this and then opted to use the actual chalk paint. I just figured with the brush I was going to have a little bit better time with getting the shapes that I wanted. So you could certainly use the paint markers if you're more comfortable with that, but don't be afraid to use the paint, right? So I'm just coming in. I had gone through and made a bunch of little leaves in the celery color, and now I'm coming in around my vines with some of the darker green, the fern color. And once I have all of the leaves that I want, I am going to come in with opposite colors on each of the leaves to give a little bit of dimension. So you can see here I'm using some of the darker green on the lighter green. And then once I have all of that set, I'm going to come back in with some more of the lighter green. And when I came back in with the celery again, and you're going to see that in a second, I did use it to kind of tone down some of the areas with the dark green that I might have had a little heavy hand here and there. So just keep at it with the paint until it's the way that you like it, right? So paint is easy because you can paint right over it. But I'm loving this, and I hope you love it too.
DIY number 18.
So for this project, I have the base from a Dollar Tree paper towel holder, and then a whole bunch of these evergreen ties that I've had in my stash from last Christmas season. And I'm just going to fold them all in half to get the center point, and I'm cutting them with my wire cutters. I am just going to then take them and at the halfway point bend them around the paper towel holder here and give them a good twist so they're on secure, and I am just going to do this all the way around the paper towel holder. And you can see we're actually building a really easy little evergreen wreath. And you can make this as full or as sparse as you choose. I chose to make this relatively full. And so every time I added one of these, I just slid it up behind the one in front of it and just made sure that they were all on there nice and secure. So now I have a bunch of these teeny little ornaments from the Dollar Tree as well, and I am just going to identify where I want to place them. I have silver in a couple of different styles, so like glittery and shiny and matte, and then gold that was glittery, and my red as well. So once I have them placed around where I want them, I'm just kind of trying to figure out how I want to attach them. And I decided against hot glue, so I pulled out my floral wire and I started to attach them through the part of the ornament that you use to hang them normally. And that was working fine, and you'll see I did that a few times, but then I just felt like they were sticking out too far off of the wreath, and I was trying to twist it, get it tighter in there, and eventually, and then I was just clipping off of the wire there. But after a little bit of doing that, I finally decided that I wanted to try doing it without the little hanger. So you can see here, I'm about to pull that off. I'm like, you know what? Let me try and attach it directly to the bulb. And it does have a little lip on there, which worked perfectly so that the wire doesn't slide off. So I just wrapped the wire around the little neck of the bulb itself and then attached it to the wreath. And that just gave me, the fit was a little bit more snug, and that made me a little bit happier. But here it is with all my little bulbs on there, and then I knew I wanted to put a ribbon on here, like a really pretty bow. So I pulled out my Kirkland ribbon. You guys have probably heard me talk about this before. I understand from one of my sweet subscribers that places like Sam's Club and BJ's also carry this type of ribbon. So obviously it's going to be their own brands, but Definitely check out your wholesale clubs if you have one near you, because I will tell you this 50-yard roll of ribbon was $6.99 at Costco, and I love it. I've got every single year I go back and get more of their ribbon, and they usually have new styles and textures and prints, and just so pretty. I love it so much, and it's such a great price. So I created my ribbon, I'm just tying it on here, and then I created a little loop with some of the excess ribbon, so I have a hanger. And there it is, just fluffing up my ribbon. And now this is a wreath that I had made with a little wreath hanger back in spring, and I'm going to use that for my wreath to be putting on my tiered tray in just a little bit.
DIY number 19.
Okay, this is a paper plate, or actually a set of paper plates that I picked up at my local grocery store. I got them at the same time as the napkins. They do match. So now I'm going to have like a little matching set of decor. But I'm going to grab out one of these plates, and I am going to trim off the outer edge that I don't necessarily need for the project. So my goal is going to be to get this as flat as I possibly can. So in order to do that, I want to remove that part that's super curvy. I could have cut off more, but you can see my little gnome head, his hat at the top there is up on the curved part. So I'm trying to figure out how to lay this flat. It is kind of gathered is not the right word. You can tell that it was a flat piece that was run through a machine and made curved. So there are pleats, there you go. There are kind of pleats in it that I'm trying to get to lay flat. So I was using my hot heat gun, trying to massage it out, and it was working to some extent, and you probably could continue to do it that way and get it where you need it eventually, but I was starting to lose my patience, so I grabbed my easy press. Now you could also use an iron if you have an iron. You definitely want to use butcher paper or parchment paper, something to protect the surface and your iron or your easy press. But I went ahead and got that hooked up. I think I had it set to like 350 degrees. I honestly can't remember. It was whatever it was set at the last time I used it. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to see it on the video to see what it was actually set to. I believe it was 350, and I believe, oh, I almost saw it, but no. And I know it was set for 60 seconds because I thought, oh, I'll try that. And I ended up taking it off after about 30 seconds because I was starting to smell something like it might be singeing, and I did not want to burn it, right? So I picked that up, pulled it off. It did flatten it pretty well. And it's still hot, obviously, so I'm sticking it under my mat to try and cool it between the mat and my table, because it wasn't going to do anything to my table. It wasn't that hot. But I got it sufficiently flat for what I was looking to do. So now I'm grabbing a piece of foam core board, and I'm going to get it arranged on here in such a way that I'm going to be able to use it as backing. I'm just scoring the foam core board right now with my utility knife. I didn't go all the way through it. I'm finding that that is a really easy way, or easier way, for me to get a shape that I want by just scoring the top part of it and then going back through the foam, and then if I need to go back through a third time to hit the paper on the opposite side, that just works really well for me. So now I am laying it out on the foam core board. I've got my regular Mod Podge. This is just matte Mod Podge, and I'm going over the entire back surface of my plate and making sure I'm going over the edges. I'm being careful not to get Mod Podge on the front of this. And then once I have this completely coated all the way out to the edges, I'm going to go ahead and apply it down to the foam core board. So plop it right on there and get it lined up. And then I decided I really needed something heavy to put on this until it was dry, because otherwise it was going to potentially curl up and away from the backing, and I didn't want that to happen. So I've got this board, I think that's MDF, and then my Mod Podge giant container is pretty heavy, and then I ended up putting my easy press on it too. So once it was dry, I went ahead and peeled that parchment paper away. I've got my
self-healing mat, and I grabbed my X-Acto knife. And here I'm just going to score it again because that's going to give me the most amount of control. So I'm just scoring it right along the edge of the plate. I'm basically tracing the plate with the X-Acto knife. And once I got through that first layer, I could, with control, then go down through the foam layer and through the bottom paper layer to get this completely cut out. So just take your time. Remember that I speed my videos up by about 2.5 times so as not to completely bore you through all of the process. So I am going much slower than it appears I'm going. So just be careful with those sharp knives. All right, now I have some of my Kirkland ribbon. Don't know if you noticed, but it's basically the same pattern that was on the outer edge of the plate to begin with. That outer edge that we cut off was a red and black buffalo check, and this is a red and black buffalo check ribbon. And I am just kind of rolling the end of it to hide the frayed edge, not frayed, but the cut edge. So if it does fray, it will be hidden. And then I was kind of gathering it. I don't know if you could tell. This is a wired ribbon. So you can do this with regular ribbon as well. If I were to use regular ribbon, instead of just kinking it the way that I am, I'm just kind of forcing it to gather, essentially, by leveraging the ribbon or the wire that's in there. With non-wired ribbon, I would take a needle and thread or a sewing machine and just run a not too tight stitch, so a relatively loose stitch down the length of it, and then I would tie a knot in the one end of the threads and then pull the threads and gather the ribbon up on the thread, and that will create a gather for you just like this. So I am just going to continue to gather it up. You probably saw that I was applying it with hot glue. So gathering, 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 and then I'm going to lift it up and put down some hot glue and then just press it down into the hot glue. So just a cute little holiday country design. This would be super cute. Just about anywhere. I was going to say in a little girl's room. I don't know if a little girl would like this in her room, but I don't know. Oh my gosh. But I think it's cute. So I left a couple of extra inches on the end there so that I can roll it just again to hide that raw edge. That was the term I was looking for before, the raw edge. And then I will go ahead and adhere that as well. And this is pretty much done except for the little hanger that we'll do in just a moment, but just making sure that the ends are overlapping so that you can't really see the seam and that everything is nice and lined up. Sealing that down and voila, there we go. I think these are super cute, these little guys. So now I'm going to grab some red cord that I have in my stash. I can't remember if that was from the Dollar Tree or if it was from somewhere else, but I just took maybe a 3-inch piece. I decided to make a knot in it to have like a little loop. Not necessary. I don't know why I felt the need to put a knot in it, but at any rate, I am gluing down my loop. I was just making a mess of it. I should have let it just cool. I was trying to push it back down into the glue and oh goodness, just applied some more glue, let it cool, and once it was cool, I cut off that little end, and this is it. DIY number 20.
Okay, this is, I think that used to be a candle, or I'm not sure where I got it. It could have come from the Dollar Tree, but I think it was an old candle from an old candle. I have my olive oil, I have a thing of water there. I've got a bunch of little Christmas doodads that I am going to attempt to use. I had a feeling some of these were going to float in water, and so I wasn't really sure what was going to work. I've got these red glass beads that I knew would clearly sink to the bottom, but I was trying to go with things that were a little bit heavier in hopes that they would sink and not float. So I am going to cut down some of this little evergreen and just try and make sure that it's going to fit in there. I want to make sure that everything is going to remain at least an inch below the top of the vase. That is my goal. I'm probably more like an inch and a half because I want to make sure that it's not going to interfere with what I'm doing at the top of the vase. Now, this is something that I had seen online a few months ago. My goodness, excuse me, I can't stop yawning. I'm always recording this late at night because it's really the only time I have to do my voiceovers, so forgive me. But I'd seen this online a few months ago, and I thought it was such a neat idea. Essentially, we are going to be creating an oil candle. So I've got my little decorations in here, and you can put anything that you want in there as long as it won't float. But I'm filling this up with water. I ran out of water in there, so I had to go get more. I'm leaving about an inch, only filling it so that it comes to about an inch from the top. Now I'm going to start pulling things out that are floating because they're floating big time and sticking up above the water. Yeah. In hindsight, I probably could have left them because we're going to have kind of a barrier that you'll see in a minute. But this is a Dollar Tree candle. It came, I think they were 4 or 5 to a box. They're like emergency candles. And I literally just bent it in half. It was weird because normally candles, in my experience, snap. This one like was bending. It was strange, but I was able to break the candle in the middle, and then I just literally pulled the wick out of it. So if you have wicks, you can use them, you know, without having to destroy a candle to get to them. But I then tied a knot in it about an inch from one end. Now I am struggling with this plastic container because I want the base out of there. I finally realized the best way to do it was getting my piercing tool. So I'm poking a bunch of little holes along the edge, kind of all in a row. And that gave me a place where I could stick my scissors in there and cut that out. Just be real careful when you're doing this because you don't want to end up cutting yourself by accident. I was doing things that were not real safe that I didn't include on the camera, but just be careful. So now I'm just trimming down that base, and it ended up being all for naught because I decided to stick it in there and make sure that it was going to float, and it sank immediately. So I was like, oh no. And then, of course, it disrupted everything that had not yet been floating and caused other things to float. So goodness, the struggle is real sometimes, I promise. So I ended up pulling a few other pieces out. And then I went back to my little plastic bottle to see if I could salvage this by using a different piece of it. So the sides of this are a little thinner. So this does end up floating for me. I'll show you in just a second. But it is curved, so I had to kind of work with it and curve it in the opposite direction. And here I'm showing you that it actually is going to float, drying it off. But you just want to make sure you get it as flat as possible. So I placed it on my scissors because I'm trying to poke a hole right in the middle of it. Just making sure my hole is big enough that I can put my wick through it. Now I started putting it up from the bottom and then realized I want to have it drop down from the top. So I want my knot at the top. That's going to keep the wick from falling down into the jar. Leaving the tail in the water. And now it's time for my olive oil. So I'm just going to pour my olive oil right over that plastic barrier. And that's why I was saying that I could probably have left some things that were going to float up to the top because they wouldn't have passed that. Now, just for fun, I decided to put some green glitter in the top. My olive oil had a bit of a greenish tinge, but it was really more yellow. So I decided, let's put some green glitter in there. If I had to do it again, would I do it again? I don't know. It's fine, but it does look a little weird to me. So anyway, I went ahead and lit it up, and y'all, I was able to let this burn while I continued to craft for a couple of hours, and it hadn't even made a dent in the olive oil from what I could tell. So I think this would burn for a good long time, and I'm really excited about how it looks. But take a look at the final reveal picture here and let me know what you think of this one.
DIY number 21.
So for this project, I have a wood round. It was part of a pack of, I believe it was 3 from the Hobby Lobby. I've had it for a while. And I gave that a coat of my white paint, and then my little farm fresh cutout, that's from the Dollar Tree. It was a pack of like 6 different ones, and I gave that a red coat. And then I decided that I didn't want the white super white, so I used a little tiny bit of antique wax by Waverly, and I'm going over this with a baby wipe. Once it was dry, I secured my little Farm Fresh sign with hot glue, and then I grabbed some tumbling tower blocks, and I was thinking that these would make good tree trunks. Eventually I did swap that out, but for the time being, I'm just trying to decide how I want to form my little branches for my evergreen trees. So I'm just giving them a little haircut because sometimes these little evergreen ties look better when they are just like trimmed up. So this is where I decided that I didn't really like the tree trunks. So I grabbed some skewers. These are also from the Dollar Tree. And I cut them down. I cut them 3 of them the same length. And once I had those all cut, I went over them with the antique wax too. And I made them nice and brown so that they would stand out against that backdrop. So I got all of my little branches ready, and I've got them kind of prepared on my sign the way I want them all lined up, just trying to figure out how they're going to be positioned here. So once I had them pretty much the way I wanted them, I went ahead and blown away all the little extra the haircut remnants. And I am hot gluing down my little tree trunks, and then I'm going to come back with my branches and secure those as well. So just a little drop of glue right on the skewer where I want to place my branch, and I am just gluing all those down. And I did that with all 3 of the trees. And I did offset that middle one. So each of the bottoms of those trunks are about the same distance from the edge of the circle. So it just makes them look like they're different heights. And then I decided I wanted to distress it a little bit with some more white paint on the red. And then I decided I also wanted to make my little trees look a little bit flocked and snowy. So I just went over them with a very dry brush and gave them a little bit of white. And that's it. And I love this one too. Let me know what you think.
DIY number 22.
So does this little guy look familiar? I made him back in Christmas in July. I'll leave a link in the description box in case you didn't get to see me make him. But my sister figured out how to make a cartoon out of him. So we took a picture, and this is what she created. I was so excited. So I printed it out on water slide paper from Hippo, and I'm sealing it up with the matte acrylic spray that I showed you. When you do this, you want to make sure that you do it 3 times and let it dry in between. And now I'm cutting it down. I do have a complete video on water slide and how it actually works. So I'm rushing through this a little bit, but we'll leave a link for that video as well in case you want all of the details on how to do this. But it's super easy, and you can print pretty much anything off of an inkjet printer and create your own decals. So I've slid it off onto my little white Dollar Tree mug, and I'm using my paper towel to kind of squeegee all of the water out. Keep in mind this is sped up about 3 times, so I am being pretty gentle and just going slow in trying to get that water out so that I don't damage my decal. So once I have it all in place, and you can see you can adjust it, so now I'm kind of holding it down in the middle so that even as I'm gently wiping it, I don't want it to slide, I want it to stay put. So if you like this little guy as much as I do, I'm excited to tell you that he is available in my Etsy shop as a digital download, so a printable, as well as on t-shirts and mugs. So if you don't want to create your own, it's out there for you and available. So I hope that you'll check that out. There is a link in my description box.
DIY number 23.
This is my inspiration picture. I saw it on Kirkland's. It is super cute, but out of my price range, so we're gonna make it. I've got a Dollar Tree little bin. I thought I was gonna be able to take that flowers little wording off with some acetone. It wasn't coming off, but that's okay because we're going to go ahead and paint it white anyway. So I thought at first I might be able to use the galvanized tin, but then eventually I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go with that inspiration picture. So I also have these picks that I picked up from the Walmart, and these are boxwood, I suppose, but we're going to make them into whatever that little evergreen was. So I'm taking a wooden dowel and I am using some floral wire, and I'm just wrapping it and wrapping it and wrapping it at the tip of that dowel. And then I'm going to work my way down with some of the other picks. I have a total of 5 of the boxwood picks, and I'm just going to wrap them as you see here and just layer them on here as I go down. So I've got one at the top. I'll layer 2 more side by side or across from each other, and then once those are secure, I'll add in 2 more just down a little bit lower, and you kind of see where they go as you go. So you'll find a really good position for them so they tuck up nicely underneath the one that came before. Hopefully that makes sense. So once I got them all nice and secure, these actually do have like little divots in the stems. So I'm using those to my advantage to just make sure that the wire is catching really strong and staying nice and tight. And I just worked my way back up again. So now I'm using my little wire cutters to cut apart this little berry pick from the Dollar Tree. I'm just doing the little clusters of this, of 3 to 5 berries approximately, and doing my best. Now these are white styrofoam coated with some sort of a red enamel paint, and you can see some of the white is showing. So I pulled out one of my Arteza markers in a similar color. I think this one's called Wine, and I just went ahead and filled it in wherever I saw some white, and you never knew that it was imperfect. It hit it very well. So now I am going into my Cricut design studio on my phone. I am looking for something with farm fresh Christmas trees. Once I identified the design I wanted to use, it was already designed. I just picked it and set it up on there. Went ahead and got it to the right size for my little pail, bucket, whatever you want to call that. Used my Cricut Joy to cut it out. And then I went ahead and cut down my vinyl and weeded it and got it prepped. Now, I don't know why, but I tend to struggle with the smart vinyl when I try to get it onto my transfer sheet. So I didn't spend a lot of time showing you how I did that. It took some effort. So if you have trouble with that too, know that you are not alone. But I did finally get it onto my transfer tape. I'm applying it to my bucket. Now it is going to curve a little bit with the tapering of the bucket. So my farm fresh to the sides of the truck do kind of end up angling up a little bit. And that's normal just because of the flat design that I was using. And it doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, that's something you might want to keep in mind and make sure you try to account for. I'm just using the back of my transfer tape paper there to help smooth it out so I don't knock up the vinyl as I'm going. I'm just using that same Arteza paint marker in that wine color to trim out the top of my little bucket. And once I'm done with that, I am going to take some of the Dollar Tree, what is that, floaty? You know what I'm talking about? Noodle. Pool noodle, and I'm cutting this down to go inside my bucket to hold my greenery. Put a very generous amount of hot glue on there. I'm going to tuck it down inside, make sure I've got it centered, and then I'm cutting up smaller pieces of the pool noodle to wedge in around there just to give it some more stability, fill up my bucket, and so that I don't have to use a whole lot of more expensive filler to get it set up and for us to hide this actually later. So I'm just wedging it in there, holding the center
really strong so that I don't end up knocking it out as I am wedging those other pieces in. And so you can see this holds it really well. Now I'm using just regular old Dollar Tree plastic bags and I'm tucking those in. Again, I'm just trying to fill this up with inexpensive material so that I'm not having to use more expensive, fancy looking materials to fill the whole bucket. So we'll come back to that in a minute, but right now I'm going to take all my little berries. You can see Sammy is off to the left watching me work, my little love bug, but he's frequently with me. But I am just taking my little berries with hot glue, adding a little bit of hot glue to the berries, and then tucking them in on the little branches here and there towards the tips, wherever I decided I liked it. This is Excelsior from the Dollar Tree that I'm dropping in around the base of my little bucket around my little tree. And I'll show you right now. See how cute? Loving this. DIY number 24. So I have these wood ovals from the Hobby Lobby. I believe they were $2.99 for the pack of two. I've got some fabric. I've got little Dollar Tree Christmas tree, Dollar Tree little mini present ornament things. Actually, I'm not even sure that they're ornaments. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be, but I thought they were super cute. And then I had some picks there. So I'm just taking some parchment paper and I am fashioning somewhat of a template. I wanted to make sure that I had an idea of how large that was. So I'm cutting out a little bit of a pattern, but then I folded it in half and I cut it down more because I want to create like a little rug. So I just wanted to kind of have the right shape, and I don't know. I'm sure that there are better ways of doing this than what I just did, but it was the way that I did it. So I went ahead and cut out a piece of the fabric, and then it occurred to me I probably should go ahead and prepare my wood so it could dry while I was doing other things. So I kind of ignored my fabric there for a second, sanded down any of the rough patches, and then I am using my Waverly Antique Wax with a baby wipe, and I am just going to make sure that I've got the wood piece completely stained, front, back, sides, all over. Set that aside to dry, and then I went back to my fabric. I'm just cutting out around my little pattern that I had created so that I have my little rug for the little scene that I am going to be creating. Not sure why I decided to show you so much of me cutting, but there we go. So now I am taking my green fabric. This is a little bowl that I've turned upside down because I wanted a circle. So I just took a pencil and it was just dark enough for me to be able to see it on the green, and I cut it out, and then I'm folding my circle in half like 3 times. I'm going to trim off the ends just to make sure that they're all even so it's a really nice perfect circle, and then I'm going to cut off the tip right here. So right there, I cut off the tip so you can see there's a hole in the center, and then I'm going to clip it so we have a little tree skirt. Did you see that? So basically create a circle, you cut out the middle, and then yeah. So I pulled this ribbon out of my stash. This is a Dollar Tree ribbon, and I am just going to run this kind of like rickrack. Oh my gosh, is rickrack even still a thing? My grandmother used to use rickrack. I think my mother even used rickrack. I'm like having flashbacks to the 1970s and some of the clothing that I was dressed in. But at any rate, oh, now I'm aging myself. But I applied that to the edge of the tree skirt just to make it nice and cute. And now I am just setting my little pieces on my platform, so to speak. So I'm coming in with this pick, and I was cutting these little balls off, and then I realized I could slide them right off of the pokey things. So once I had them all prepared, I'm using a little bit of hot glue, and I am applying them to my tree like Christmas balls. And this only takes a tiny little bit of hot glue, and you can tell I was getting too much of it, so I was kind of sharing the hot glue. I'd put it on one, rub some of it off on another, and apply both of them at the same time. So just needs a teeny tiny little bit of glue, and it worked like a charm. And I just thought that this was so adorable, and really, really happy with how it was turning out.
So once I went ahead and had as many balls on there that I wanted, I grabbed this other Dollar Tree ribbon that I had in my stash that I thought looked a little bit like a garland. So I added some hot glue to the tip of that, added that to my tree, kind of stuck it in there, and then I went ahead and I wrapped it around the tree, or twirled the tree and held on to the garland so that it wrapped. And then, so I did it from tip to base, and then I just secured it at the base with some more hot glue. And I just glued it in a place where it wasn't noticeable. I know it was kind of hard to see there where I had glued it. I reapplied my little tree skirt. I've got my little scene going on, my little white rug, and now it's time for the presents and just getting it ready for Christmas morning. So just adding those on, gluing them down where I want them. And I just think that this is so sweet. I love this so much. It makes my heart happy. So the one final touch, I came back in and I was pulling off some more of these little, I don't even know what you would call them, little, I'm going to call them beads for lack of a better term. And I pulled off about 6 of them so that I could create a little silver star. So again, hot glue, just gluing them together one at a time, just adding them around the center bead. And you could use beads for this if you wanted to. There's no reason why you couldn't. It doesn't have to be this styrofoam glittery stuff, right? So whatever you might have in your stash, I'm sure you've got something that you could use. And then adding some hot glue to the tip of my tree and applying my little star. And this one is all wrapped up. Love it.
DIY number 25. Here's my inspiration picture for this one. This is going to be another one that's super fast. This, I believe I found these on Amazon. I think I just saw there they were $15.99 for the set. But I am going to be using a ping pong ball, again, another scrap of my mop head, a Dollar Tree sock, and then I have a wood bead that I had gotten in a big set there from Amazon. So just using some hot glue to apply my mop head to the ping pong ball. And I'm trying to figure out if the sock is going to need to be cut down. Actually, width-wise, it was perfect. So I was able to just cut off the top where I thought it might work out well. And I'm using some more of my tinsel ribbon again and just tying that off. And then I will also create a loop right there for our little hanger, and I'll just tie that there as well. So once I have that all situated, I am going to try and figure out which one of these beads I want to use for his little nose. I've got a bunch of different sizes there. And once I settled on the size that I wanted to use, I went ahead and used some hot glue just to secure that in place. Isn't he cute? Now you could stop there, but I decided I wanted to add a little bit of an embellishment up near where the hanger is attached to his hat, just to make it look a little bit neater. So I've got these jingle bells from the Dollar Tree. Now this was like a garland of jingle bells. It took me a minute to undo it because of course I had to untie it. I for whatever reason decided I just couldn't cut it, so I went ahead and untied it, and then I fashioned that on there with some hot glue. And now I'm using a garland tie from the Dollar Tree, just a little piece of it, and I'm giving it a haircut to just trim it down a little bit. And I'm going to cut that piece in half as well, and then I'm going to just apply those little pieces of greenery to the underneath of the jingle bell there, just so that it gives it a little bit more fun interest, for lack of a better term. And there he is. I love him. And here's a side by side.
Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, please remember to give me a big thumbs up, Leave me a comment. Let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.